Hey guys, so today I'm back with another look based on an amazing tattoo. This time I'm doing it based on Jamie Lee Parker's portrait tattoo that's set in some creepy woods. This took me about 10 hours to complete. This is probably the longest makeup I've ever done, so I hope you guys enjoy it. Let's get started. Using some light gray face paint, I started to map out the shapes. You can map them with a white pencil, but I decided to go in straight with a face paint since it's already light, and you can erase mistakes easily if you make any. Ugh, painting in your nose is not fun. Once that was done, I shaded in my jawline with black face paint. With dark blue face paint, I started mapping out the background on my neck. Then I went in with green face paint and blended the colors together to form a fading effect. At the center, I used a light teal face paint. I like to blend colors directly on the skin. I think it gives a nice even finish, but you can blend the colors elsewhere like on a palette if you prefer. I applied the teal face paint on my cheekbones and my temples, then went in with the green face paint closer to the center of my face and with the blue face paint on the center of my face. The idea is to make it darker at the center and have a glowing aura around the edges. After that was done, I went in with a tiny brush and cleaned up the edges of the gray face paint. With another small brush and the different shades of blue and green, I cleaned up the gray outlines even more. I also added another layer of teal to make the color stronger. I started shading and contouring my face with black face paint, but with barely any product on my brush. As you can see, it's a very light wash of color, and I used a dry brush technique. I did this just to set a base for the further shading I'd be doing with eyeshadow. Using a dark gray shadow and a fluffy brush, I proceeded to shade in my face a bit more. Again, using very little product on my brush. In cases like this where the shading is subtle, you're better off going little by little, working your way to the darker shadows, instead of packing a whole load of product at once and then regretting it later. I used a pencil brush around the eyes and anywhere I wanted a more precise application of the eyeshadow. Oops, here I packed on a little too much product and had to really blend it out. So as I said, just take your time and go little by little. Then with some blue eyeshadow, I blended the blue out for a more even fade. Blending out eyeshadows is easier than blending out face paint, so working with both products you can achieve really great color transitions. Once I was happy with the gradient, I went in with an even darker blue eyeshadow, and concentrated it right at the center of my face. To make sure I didn't go over the gray areas while using the fluffy brush, I used a pencil brush to go really close to the gray. Little happy dance, my gradient's working. Then with black face paint on a liner brush, I started the darker shadows. I also went in and filled in my eyebrows. I felt the ends of my eyebrows weren't covered enough, so I went in with an extra layer of gray face paint. My natural brows were much thicker than the ones I was going for, so I had to cover mine up. I filled in my lips with less product so they'd be a dark gray and not black. Now to give the illusion of thick luscious lips, you'll want to shade around the edges of the lip, leaving it blank where the light would hit it. I'm also drawing in new corners of my lips to change their shape. I painted some darker shadows around my eyes and my nose. Here you can see me mixing color on the skin again. I applied too much black and went over with the gray to even it out, and did very subtle shading with what was left over on the brush. For this next bit, I actually mixed the black and the gray on my hand before I applied it, so that I could have more control over it. Now paying super close attention to the reference picture, I started drawing in the branches. This is what probably took the longest. Before I drew all them in, I decided to go in with another layer of teal to make it stronger. I also blurred the black edge along the gray area. Now with a really skinny felt tip eyeliner, I drew very fine lines. Here I was seeing up to where I had to draw the branches to. Paying close attention to your reference picture is super important. I also used the felt liner to draw really thin branches. Those were finally done, so moving on to my neck. I mixed the teal with white to get it really bright at the center. Then I stippled black along the edges. I did a lot of layers of the teal and the white to make it really bright. The more layers you have, the more opaque the color will be. While my neck was drying, I went in and blurred some lines with some black eyeshadow, then did further shading with face paint. Then I did some white highlights. Doing this close to the upper lip really makes it stand out. I went back and forth between shading and highlighting. Using white to highlight your edges is great for any sort of face painting you're doing. It really adds an extra something. All you need is a really thin brush and some patience. Usually the white highlight is the last thing that you do, but after adding the highlights, I decided to darken some of the shadows. I also added more highlights to the lips. Back with a gray shadow on the fluffy brush, but with more product this time, I'm going in and blending out the shadows. Then changing to a pencil brush for a more precise application. To make the shadows even darker, I went in with a black eyeshadow. This is a very pigmented black shadow, so I went very lightly with it, and only concentrated it on a few areas. Once that was all done, I drew my attention to the neck again, and started drawing the branches there. I used less product on the thinner branches to make them look as if they were far away. Then did the same with the blue face paint. Using blue as they get towards the center make them look really far away, as if they're in some sort of fog. And a mandatory pause for Snapchat mid-makeup. I went with some teal over the blue to fix any branches that went too far in, and added another layer of the teal with the white. Now a creepy dude appears. Seriously though, I probably wouldn't want to go walking in this forest. And I drew some extra black branches that the blue may have gone over. Now for some super discreet details, I'm painting in some reflections. I'm using both the teal and the blue face paints. Finally moving on to my hands, I painted about 2 or 3 layers of the grey. Then shaded in with the black face paint just like I did on my face, using very little product. I did the shading with a small brush and blended it out with a big brush that I used to apply the grey in my hands. You want to really work the black into the cuticles to give a nice shading effect. You also don't have to paint your whole hands, just the parts that will be visible. Here I made a bit of a mistake. I should have painted the blue gradient before I painted in the branches. At this point my hand was getting a bit tired from holding it up, so I took some blue eyeshadow and painted in some more reflections. This makes it look like there's light bouncing off of the background onto the grey. It's something extremely subtle, but it's a nice touch. Then I went in with a black pencil and tight lined my waterline. That's when you line both the top and the bottom waterline. I finished painting the branches on my hands and added some more black to my neck. Then I had to carefully paint the blue in between the branches since I didn't do this before drawing them in. I blended the blue with the black for the outer edges. And did the same on my neck. I mixed black with blue and tapped the color on the outer edges. I tapped it so that I'd get the texture from the brush. After that base layer was dry, I varied between pure black and light teal with a tapping motion so that I'd get the texture from the brush. I made sure not to drag the brush unless I wanted to mix the colors together. By just stippling the color on, you get a really nice texture. I did lots of layers of the teal. It dries a bit dark, so you have to reinforce it. I also added a bit more blue to the man's shadow and to the trees. I painted with black further down my arm, trying to get a good shape for the edge. And went over the black with the teal, making that same texture that I made on the neck. For the other hand, it's the same process all over again, but this time I remembered to add the blue before I painted in the branches. Trust me, that will make your life a lot easier. Once that was done, I took some baby wipes and cleaned off my edges and shaped them to the shape I really wanted. Sometimes it's just easier to paint further than what you need and then clean it up after. Again, I stippled in the teal for that cool grass effect. I also added some more teal to the background to really make it pop. You can't forget to apply a good dose of black mascara. Make sure to apply plenty to the bottom lashes too. Now for the very last detail, I'm going back with a white along my edges to make them really crisp. I'm also going over the highlighted points of my face. And just to make the white edges stand out a tiny bit more, I'm going in with a gray eyeshadow right next to the white line. And that's it! You're done! You can finally celebrate and haunt people and creep people out. But all jokes aside, this is great practice for using different techniques, so I really hope you liked it. Thanks so much for watching. See you next time. Bye!